Welcome. Are you interested in finding out about toxic shame? I'll explain it all in this video. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy this content. My name is Stephanie. You probably know me as Altered States of Consciousness. So let's get right into the topic at hand. Toxic shame. Toxic shame comes from trauma in childhood, and trauma can range from being ignored and neglected by your caretakers to extreme physical or sexual abuse. Some children grow up in environments where their feelings and emotions are constantly invalidated. Most children grew up in homes where their parents had unresolved traumas themselves, which negatively affects how they tend to support their child's needs and emotions. In situations like these, it becomes common to become defensive around your vulnerable feelings. If you watched my last video, then you know when childhood trauma continues over time and remains unresolved, a form of post-traumatic stress can develop, which is called complex PTSD. This has significant consequences on mental and emotional health, plus quality of life. It's common to experience feelings of helplessness and shame with complex PTSD. In order to heal, most people with c-ptsd must confront hopeless thoughts, painful emotions, and intolerable sensations. Navigating this territory requires careful guidance. It is all too common to get stuck in avoidance patterns, fall in a pit of despair, or become imprisoned by the negative thoughts. You can find freedom from shame and helplessness. This process requires gentleness, acceptance, and persistence. That was a quote by Dr. Ariel Schwartz. There is no such thing as the generalized shame disorder. People seeking therapy are rarely given an assessment for their levels of toxic shame, though these assessments do exist. However, shame does often play a central role in many mental health disorders, both in terms of the subjective experience of the person and the mechanism that causes distress and prevents recovery. Complex post-traumatic stress, in particular, is characterized by the central role toxic shame plays in its function and expression. The expression and range of symptoms vary greatly from person to person, but they can all be understood to be a process of learning to survive under adverse conditions. For example, dissociative episodes in which a person feels detached may have originated as a way of surviving painful abusive episodes from which they could not escape. Make sure to watch my video on c-ptsd. I'll link it at the top of the screen and in the description. Learned helplessness. When abuse is prolonged and we are unable to stop it, a child feels powerless. Persistent childhood trauma is often characterized by a state of what is called learned helplessness. This term was actually introduced to describe how animals who were repeatedly exposed to an unavoidable shock would make no attempt to escape, even when given an opportunity to exit. Psychologists later extended an understanding of learned helplessness to people who feel and behave in a helpless manner when they have no control over a threatening situation or prolonged abuse. It is common to generalize your experience when you have been raised by untrustworthy caregivers. The outside world may feel dangerous and unsafe, or you might feel as though no one can be trusted. Healing from c-ptsd is a process of finding safety in your current reality and realizing you now have choices and are no longer stuck in the powerlessness of your past. Toxic shame as a symptom. Toxic shame is an important symptom of c-ptsd. It can also be understood in terms of a process of adaptation to traumatic circumstances. When someone frequently faces abuse at the hands of someone they rely on for food, shelter, or other basic needs, they might begin to cope by internalizing feelings of hatred that the abuse naturally evokes. When a victim blames themselves for what is happening, it may be easier to relate to the abuser as a caregiver when necessary. This process of learning to self-blame can instill deep feelings of shame that persist long into later life. People with c-ptsd often find themselves gripped by intense feelings of shame that debilitate them and trap them in a cycle of despair. Intense and uncontrollable feelings of shame can be a major obstacle to recovery. They prevent people from being able to confront what happened in the past. But this is a necessary part of the healing process. Recognizing toxic shame. Shame is the internalized belief that I am bad. This emotion is based upon a distorted image of yourself. You feel as though you are unworthy, damaged, or a failure. The question is, why is shame so pervasive? Young children are completely dependent upon caregivers for a sense of safety and connection in the world. So if you had an abusive caregiver, you faced a critical conflict. You had a biological drive to seek closeness from the very source of abuse or neglect you were trying to escape. Adults who are abused or neglected as children tend to blame themselves, which can lead to persistent feelings of guilt and shame. This self-blame is linked to childhood logic. Children begin to develop a fantasy that they are bad kids, relying upon good parents to avoid confronting the terrifying reality that they are experiencing abuse from their caretakers. When parents are frightening, abusive, or unavailable, children will feel confused about who is at fault. When children witness something bad happening, they will also feel bad. Inaccurate and judgmental thoughts perpetuate toxic shame in cases of complex PTSD, such as, I'm worthless, I don't deserve to be treated well, I always mess everything up, I must be stupid, why can't I do anything right, why would anything good happen to me? Furthermore, shame is often hidden behind perfectionism. As a child, you may have internalized the belief that you had to be perfect because your parents couldn't handle you or your feelings. Some fall into the trap of believing that acting good would stop the abuse. In either situation, you have had to hide your feelings to avoid rocking the proverbial boat. Perfectionism is maintained in adulthood by the use of critical self-talk that mimics how our caretakers talk to us or how we internalize the abuse. When your inner critic begins to criticize you for being lazy, stupid, or useless, you are again confronted with toxic shame. Just like depression, anxiety, and stress, shame is not inherently bad in all situations. It can be helpful to keep this in mind. For example, imagine a situation where you have done something wrong or immoral. You know no one is likely to find out about it, but your actions still caused you to harm another person. Do you confess and try to make amends? We would all hope the answer is yes. But if you do pass this moral test, what emotion prompted you to do so? The answer is shame. Shame is the voice that tells us, in this case correctly, that we have done something wrong. The path to long-term recovery from c-ptsd takes us through a new process of learning and adaptation. On this journey, the various emotions and feelings that make up the human personality can find their proper balance. If you would like support exploring symptoms and beginning to work toward healing, seek help from someone qualified. Finding freedom. Once you are aware of the thoughts and feelings that are dominating your experience, you can begin to do something about it and face your pain with non-judgmental self-compassion. Let's take a look at a couple practices that can begin to heal toxic shame. Experience the body's sensation of shame. Often the most difficult part of healing shame is tolerating the feeling of it in your body. Words can hardly describe the yucky feeling that often accompanies shame. You might experience a sinking feeling or a sensation of having done something wrong. However, over time, as you increase your capacity to stick through uncomfortable feelings, you can begin to develop practices that help you self-soothe. Once you reclaim your body from toxic shame, there is an immense amount of personal power that you regain as well. Imagine shame is a bully. Seeing shame as a bully can provide some space for your emotions and allow you to begin to talk back. How do you feel when the shame bully puts you down? What do you want to reply to the shame bully? Explore your use of language. Notice the difference between saying, "I am bad," and "I feel bad." The first statement reflects identification with a painful emotion, whereas the second statement allows for recognition of a feeling without being consumed by it. Avoid using the word should, because this word is used to push perfectionism or perceived expectations on yourself, and to reject your authentic presence. You might say, "I should be over this by now," or "I shouldn't make mistakes. I should be strong." When you say or think the word should, take a step back and focus instead on self-acceptance. I invite you to explore the different ways toxic shame shows up in your life. What thoughts or sensations accompany toxic shame for you? Take some time to journal and really process what's coming up for you. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be showing you all more about trauma responses in the future. And please share this video with a friend. See you all next time.